every single time I saw her all week, she was just fucked out of her absolute mind on drugs. And also before the burn, she was basically like putting together our camp's like group drug order. And so she made a signal chat. She's like, all right, here's like the list of all the drugs, I'll pick up whatever. I think our camp bought like 20 to 30 grand worth of drugs.
Damn.
I'm Yuki, joined by my co-host Reggie, and you're listening to Modern Day Hippie, the podcast about doing drugs in a responsible, fun, and safe way to improve your life. Before we jump into today's episode, a quick legal disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging format. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way. Now, with that, we hope you enjoyed today's show.
What's up, hippies? Today we've got a pretty special episode. We've got Yuki, who just came back from Burning Man. That's Burning Man 2023. And honestly, I can't wait to hear about it. Dude, what was it like?
Well, it was my first ever burn. And even though I had been preparing for it for months, been talking about it with friends and burners who'd been before for years, nothing can really prepare you for the experience. And I say that honestly in the best way possible, despite all of the news and the articles that came out about the like literally first ever like massive rainstorm that's happened during a burn and like the shelter in place and vehicles getting stuck, people trying to leave. Honestly, we still had a freaking blast at Burning Man. And so did like 99% of the people there, I would say. And honestly, like our camp and a few other camps had like Starlink or some form of Wi-Fi access. And we didn't have like great signal, but good enough to see some of the articles coming in. And we're like, dude, we're on international news. Like this shit is on CNN, we're on BBC. It was cool actually because a lot of the cover photos on a lot of these articles were from the camp that I was staying in that one of the guys in our camp got and sent out. But that's beside the point. It was like the single most profound experience of my life on so many levels. We're talking like spiritual, relationships, like hobbies, literally any like angle of life that you name, it's probably had an effect on me. And then my like relationship and perception of drugs to an extent as well. So happy to dive into any of those. I think for now, let's focus on the drug aspect and then we'll circle back to kind of the higher level stuff as well.
Sounds good, man. But damn, those are some big statements right there. The most profound experience of your life. Like,
dude, honestly, it's like part of me cringes a little bit because it's like, oh, I'm becoming a fucking meme. Like, oh, goes to Burning Man and changes their life. But like, there's a reason that happens and can go into it a little bit later. But it's like such a journey and you're there for a long enough time. It takes you so far out of your element that it truly feels like you're living a different life. Like it's like a place where you can be a different person and you literally have a different name. Like people have playa names that they can go by. So there's just like small things like that all like compound into really taking you out of your day-to-day element in the default or the muggle world, as some people call it.
Jeez, man. I love that. But anyways, let's get into what everybody's wondering about, the drugs. I know there are a lot of drugs at Burning Man. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to who has gone has done drugs, at least like for one of the days that they were there. So, and I know it's not like a requirement or anything, but tell me a little bit about like what you guys ended up doing.
Yeah. So to zoom out a little bit on like the drug culture at Burning Man, it's definitely extremely common. Like I would probably guess that 80 to 90% of the people in this city of like 80,000 people are doing drugs pretty consistently throughout the event. And I will say it's like not a requirement to do drugs by any means. And actually coming back from the event and now kind of processing things one day at a time, I'm kind of coming up with a list of like what makes someone a good like Burning Man candidate, just in terms of someone who I think will enjoy it. Because it's like anyone can go out there, but I do think it takes a very specific type of person to like enjoy that event. And I don't think you have to be like a super avid drug user to go and have an amazing time, but you do have to be really comfortable with other people doing drugs around you. And then in that culture like existing around you. I will say like any drug under the sun that you can name is probably at Burning Man. The only ones I didn't see are those like harder F tier drugs that what we talked about in our tier list. Things like your meth, your heroin, at least not intentionally. Maybe some things are laced because that happens. But you know, you have a bunch of camps will set up like bars, and their gift to the city will be they'll give out drinks or stuff like that. So there's a bit of drinking there, but it's very much overshadowed by all the other drugs. Like I'd say a lot of people who are burners tend to be very open-minded. They've probably had like some level of transformative experiences with psychedelics in particular. And as a result, they're just like all for other drugs. And while there's drinking there, like very few people that I saw or knew were getting anything more than like, 2 or 3 drinks in, like lightly buzzed, because they're doing so much other shit.
Damn, man. And it sounds like based on the conditions over there that drinking might not even be a move, like in terms of the dehydration and being out in the sun. You're in the desert, right?
Yeah. So Burning Man happens in this same spot of the desert in like northern Nevada. And we call it like the playa. So it used to be like a lake. Now it's like the bottom of this like ancient dried up lake bed. So it's a desert in the sense of just the climate and the temperatures. Like it gets very hot during the day, like well over 100 degrees. And at night it gets pretty close to freezing. So you have to be prepared for anything. But unlike a desert, it's not like a sandy dune desert because it's the bottom of this lake bed. It's kind of just this like very hard, compact, like flakes almost. I think of like very dried up ground. And it's nice that it's hard unless it rains, which is what happened this year. And so the main form of transportation around the city is bicycles. And it's almost like biking on concrete. Like can get a little bumpy. And there are some areas of the playa that have dunes, as we call them, but they're not like big sand dunes. They'll literally be, a few inches tall, and there'll be an area of like, a few square yards, and you just kind of have to like, you can just go over them on your bike usually, as long as you're prepared for them.
That sounds lit. So you're saying it rained when you guys were there. Does that mean that you were like, were you having trouble biking around or?
Yeah, no. So it rained enough to turn like the playa into like mud basically. And we literally could not ride our bikes for 2 or 3 days until the sun came out and dried the playa enough. And so in those couple of days, like most people were still hanging out around their camps and really like bonding with their campmates and whatnot. But we still like walked around a decent amount. And honestly, people got pretty ingenious about how to prevent mud from sticking to their boots or their shoes, because the mud is like super thick and it just sticks to your boots and it's such a pain in the ass to get off. So you're adding basically like 5 to 10 pound weights to each of your shoes. And it's hard to keep it off because like scraping it off, it's impractical to do it every time. Just walk around with it. So the most effective thing was actually putting on socks over your shoes. So I put on a pair of socks over my boots and like that worked pretty well. We still walked around and it was quite exhausting. And yeah, definitely a place where it's just like the number one rule of Burning Man is just like keep yourself alive. And it's not like necessarily hard to do in a survival sense and like you come prepared, but it's more just like reminding yourself to continue drinking water, especially electrolytes. Like everyone there is, has Liquid IV or whatever electrolyte brand they prefer. And just making sure that you're checking the box to eat, because especially when you're doing drugs all day and night, usually like it just completely throws off your like natural rhythms. So like for me, I was staying up almost all night and then I would sleep during the hottest part of the day. At least that was the goal usually. And so your schedule is completely thrown off. Like any concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner is thrown out the window. You're just like, it's just like, have I eaten recently? Did I check that box? Okay, great. And even like I took pretty good care of myself. Like I got back, I was feeling like exhausted, but like fine. Dude, I got on the scale and I lost 25 pounds
No fucking
in
way. Are
fucking
you
10
serious?
days. Yeah, I went from 180 to 155. Granted, I think that was a lot of water weight because in normal life, I drink like over a gallon of water a day. I'm really serious about that. And then on the playa, like I was drinking enough. If I was thirsty, I would drink some. But I was probably drinking like, I don't know, 1 to 2 liters a day. And you're out in the like climate. You're also biking around a lot, walking a lot, doing a lot of drugs. All these things compound on just like your body's just kind of going through it, dude. Like,
Jeez, man, that's a lot, dude.
yeah, it's intense. And the drugs are a big part of that as well. Like literally all around you, like there are people doing drugs. And yeah, first I'll go into like the drugs that I saw most commonly that I thought were interesting. And then I want to touch on like what is kind of the legality of drugs at Burning Man, because I know that's something that people are curious about. So as far as like the drugs to do at Burning Man, basically everything. But yeah, I was talking to a few friends about it, and our conclusion was that Burning Man is made for LSD because just the combination of like the lights and the art pieces and the crazy shit that you see is very, I think, in line with like a psychedelic experience, and particularly something like LSD, because it does last longer. It helps like keep you awake, so to speak. And then most importantly, actually heard a really good description comparing LSD to shrooms for the first time, which is that LSD puts you in the driver's seat, whereas shrooms keeps you in the passenger seat on those
That's a good
experiences.
description. Dude, that
Yeah,
tracks
yeah,
really
I heard that
fast
and I'm
too.
like, no, exactly. I
Yeah.
was like, damn, like that makes sense. I've never thought of it that way. And with LSD, it's nice because it still keeps your kind of desire to explore the playa alive. And there's so much to see and do. Like, it's just impossible to see and do everything. Like, it is literally, it's like trying to go to New York City for a week and trying to see and do everything. Like, it's not possible. And so it's like fine to find a place that you vibe with and get kind of rooted there, which is like what shrooms tends to do. And I did plenty of shrooms while I was there as well. But yeah, acid is more like adventurous, you know, like I would be at a set for a little bit. I'm like, you know what? I want to go explore deep playa and like see what art cars are out there and like what they're up to. So you're just tripping, you're on your bike, just riding through the middle of the fucking desert at like 4 a.m.
Sounds like a fucking video game, man.
Dude,
Like
no, literally, like you're literally in it. And even like towards the end of the week, there are moments where I'm like, I cannot believe this is real. I also learned that riding a bicycle on any drugs is so much goddamn fun. And granted, I had some friends I made there who like weren't as comfortable riding bikes. And so they like preferred to be sober if they're riding their bikes. But like, you know, me and you like grew up riding our bicycles together. And if you're like comfortable on a bicycle, dude, like riding a bike on any substance is just such a blast, man. Like whether it's psychedelics, and honestly, the most common drug I feel like I saw or I was like offered or asked about was ketamine. Surprised me a little bit, but I think it kind of makes sense because so people aren't drinking much. If they are, it's probably more during the day and they're not getting super fucked up. People aren't doing coke almost at all. I saw a bit of coke, but it's just like, you know, maybe use it to like help stay awake. But at that point, you might as well just do other drugs. And otherwise, a lot of psychedelics, a lot of ketamine. I saw a decent amount of 2C actually, like 2C, 2CB.
like actual 2C or like 2CB?
So both. And it was hard to know. Like I was definitely in some fucked up states, just like meeting people, trying to like explain to them the differences. And then at some point I was like, like test your drugs, make sure you know what you're getting, whatever. I, of course, like, so basically, here's the story of how we got our drugs at Burning Man. So obviously, you can bring drugs with you. Well, not obviously, but you know, you can bring drugs with you, like under the radar. But
Is
a
there
lot
like
of people
security or like do they pat you down? Like how does that work?
no, yeah. So basically, everyone ultimately drives into Burning Man. So even if you're flying in, the closest city you fly into is Reno, and then you're either renting a car or an RV, and then you're driving. I think the actual drive to like the gate road where like the line can start, if there is a line, which there usually is like 2 to 3 hours. So we actually drove from our home city. So it was a long ass drive. But it's like once you get past Reno, you're just on these like, right, like 1 lane roads, like these farm roads or just 1 lane going each way. And it's just like convoys, like RVs and cars, because a decent amount of people come in RVs. And so you're just like we literally got there around when the gate opens for like normal participants, as in people who aren't like helping set up art projects or aren't like volunteering with the Burning Man org. And the gates open at midnight on Saturday night / Sunday morning. Do we get there at like 2 a.m. and there's just like, we're convoying with a bunch of other RVs, and you get to the gate road. And it's basically a bunch of lanes of cars just like waiting to get through. And it's like, you know, it's very stop and go. Like you'll be stopped for a couple minutes and then your lane will move up. And dude, people will come out like literally next to us. I saw people fighting with lightsabers. I saw people like one wheeling through the playa. Like it's
Jeez.
like the party starts in the line and it's like a
Hell yeah.
complete vibe. And so basically, so I think we're in this line for about 2 hours. And when you get to the end of this line, the first step is to show your tickets. So you need a ticket per person, and then you need a vehicle pass per vehicle. And so you either bring those in with you, as in you got them mailed as you would, you know, a music festival wristband or something. Or they also have like a will call box office thing set up in the desert if you didn't get your tickets mailed. So we got through that. And then we get to the point where they check your tickets. If you have your tickets for the number of people and number of cars, they let you through. And there's a secondary waiting area that goes a lot quicker. And that's where once you get to the end of that line, they'll actually like search your vehicle.
Oh
And
shit, like for guns or what?
yeah, so the people who search the vehicles, they're not like law enforcement. There is law enforcement there. We'll get to that. but they're just like Burning Man volunteers. And so the big things they're checking for are one, that you don't have any stowaways in your vehicle, because it's a very strict, like, one ticket per person kind of thing. And then number two, they're making sure that you're not bringing in any other like living things. Like, you're not allowed to bring pets or animals or plants, because it's like such a desolate
Oh,
environment.
really?
Like,
Damn,
it's
that makes
literally like
sense. Yeah.
just humans, and technically you can bring kids. Like, I saw some kids there, more than I
No way.
expected. Dude, literally at some point I met this group of kids, probably between the ages of like 8 and like 14. Dude, this kid who was probably like 13, 14, this was his 7th burn. I'm
What
like,
the
what
fuck,
the
man?
fuck? Yeah, right?
Damn, he's got some cool parents, bro.
Dude, for real. Yeah. And I'm like, if I ever were to have kids, which I don't think I will, but if I were, I don't think I'd bring them Burning Man. And not even because of like the influence thing. It's just like, it's a lot of work and responsibility. But I do also know like there are camps or just groups of families that will go together, and they'll basically like take shifts of like watching all the kids and stuff. And there is even like a area of the city set up by the Burning Man org as like a kids area. I didn't check it out. I don't even know where the fuck it
Is that just
was.
like a camp that set that up, or like?
I really don't know, honestly. I know there's like some support infrastructure for it. And honestly, I saw more kids than I expected. But obviously, it's like during the day and stuff. And like my burn was very like nighttime oriented. So I didn't see any kids at night. Yeah. And then in that search, they're also vaguely searching for like fireworks, firearms. Like, you're not allowed to have those. But like, I mean, they have to search like tens of thousands of vehicles. So it's not super thorough. Like, honestly, like if we wanted to like have a stowaway, which we wouldn't, but we could have probably gotten one or two people into it, just like hiding in like the closet of our fairly large RV. But not recommending that. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, guys.
Yeah. And then so you can bring drugs in that way, and it's like super chill. Like, the Burning Man people are not looking for drugs. You're at the club and the music is thumping, but you've got nothing left in the tank. So what do? Sniff some cacao. Yup, you heard that right. Sniff some cacao. It's the hottest new trend in the club and party scene. One bum-sized sniff of raw chocolatey powder contains the caffeine equivalent to a half cup of coffee, and boom, it hits instantly. And the best part is you can now sniff cacao anytime, anywhere. Right out in the open, in front of the DJ booth or the stage, even at the VIP table with your friends. Now, how does that happen without drawing unwanted attention? Snogo's spring-loaded bump straws make it possible. These classy, triple mirror polished bump straws are the safest, most discreet way to enjoy sniffing cacao. In fact, you've most likely already seen people wearing Snogo's bump straws as pendants around their necks without even knowing it. Discover why sniffing cacao using Snogo bump straws is being called the biggest revolution in partying since the invention of rock and roll. Jump on over to snogostraws.com to learn more. That's SNOGOSTRAWS.com and use discount code MDH15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order. A lot of people fly into Reno instead of like driving from their home city, because people come from all over the world. So they'll fly into Reno or SF or just nearby cities. So they won't travel with many drugs. And so they'll rely on people at their camps or friends to bring them drugs. And so we went with a pretty big sound camp, which is basically a camp that throws parties. Like, that's our offering to the playa. And this sound camp, there's like a lady in the camp who is just like one of my favorite fucking humans in the world. Okay. Like, she's like a dentist normally. I swear, like, dentists are all the coolest people, as you and I
What?
know.
Like the most professional ass people, I swear.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
literally
but
the hardest.
dude, every single time I saw her all week, she was just fucked out of her absolute mind on drugs. And also before the burn, she was basically like putting together our camp's like group drug order. And so she made a signal chat. She's like, all right, here's like the list of all the drugs, I'll pick up whatever. I was talking to her like when we got there. I think our camp bought like 20 to 30 grand worth of drugs. And it was
Damn.
everything. And the prices were like very reasonable. Like, it was high quality shit. And so my point is, like, we brought some of our own drugs since we were driving, but we also brought like our full testing kit, and I still tested everything on site. And she actually also had a testing kit, which was great. Luckily I didn't need it because I used our own, but that was wild to hear. And dude, this lady, so she was like our camp cook. So basically there's like part of the camp that like comes early for setup and stays for takedown. And basically they like do that work instead of paying like camp dues. So it's like comped in a way, but they're doing a lot of hard work. And so this lady, like, her thing is just like secretly dosing people with drugs. And the amount of just like things that she cooked were
What?
like shrooms.
Secretly, bro? Like,
Yeah, I mean, no, she's like, it's not as
she
bad as
kind
it
of soaks
sounds.
it in like to the food. Like
No,
what?
it's more like hey, like, does this smoothie have shrooms or no shrooms? She's like, let me check. Dude, and
Oh my
she
God.
gave us like shrooms Rice Krispies. She has shrooms like Tootsie Rolls. Bro, and she's so smart about it because all of the drugs she brought, she like put in a bag and froze it in a giant block of ice. The reason she did this is because the one risk with going into Burning Man with drugs is like you can still get pulled over. And like this is an event that it's like a permitted event. Like the Burning Man organization has to get a permit every year for that space. And so there's multiple layers of like government, of laws, of law enforcement. And so like, you can get pulled over just as you would in normal life. And, they know you're going to Burning Man. So like, they're probably like, okay, this guy probably has drugs. And so they'll definitely look way more thoroughly than, the gate check people. And the rule is that they're not allowed to keep you for longer than 15 minutes. So if you
Oh,
freeze your
shit.
shit in a block of ice, it's not going to melt in 15 minutes. So I guess you could get off like scot free if you do that. Apparently that's what she did to bring in like $30,000 worth of drugs
Damn,
for
dude. Life
100
hack.
people.
Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. So that was freaking smart. And then one more story that I thought that, oh my God, so many stories. Let me finish with the law enforcement side because I think it's important, and I'll go into a couple stories related to drugs. So the layers of law enforcement that are involved is number one, there's the county sheriff. So like the county in Nevada where the event happens. Apparently these guys are like the biggest assholes. And I know this because one of the guys I randomly met on Playa during a sunrise while fucked out of my mind was like the head lawyer for Burning Man for the last like 15 years. Like this guy knows like all the people involved. Like he's like negotiating and shit. He was a homie. We talked for like 30 minutes during an amazing sunrise because all the sunrises on Playa are just breathtaking. And at the end, he gives me this little pill of just like Molly that's like crystal clear. And he's like, this is like the purest Molly you can get. Like this is what they used to use for marriage counseling back in the 50s.
Oh my
And
God.
it won't even make your teeth grind. And I haven't tried it yet. I still have it, but I'm like saving it for the right moment.
Dude, you better fuck on that shit.
100%, dude. 100%. Yeah. So there's the like, I think it's Dade County Sheriff. I think it's the county. Yeah, whatever. Then the second layer of enforcement is the BLM, so the Bureau of Land Management, because where the playa is technically on BLM land, which technically falls under the federal umbrella. And so there are like BLM officers. The biggest issue with that, honestly, is that since it's quote unquote federal land, weed is not legal there. And so weed is basically like the biggest no-no drug at Burning Man. And people still smoke, but it's like you really need to go out. And the reason being is just because, like it's the only drug really that like has a smell associated with it and that you can like track people down. And actually when we were having our like camp orientation on the first day, the guy who runs the camp, this is not his first rodeo at all. He was basically like his number one rule is literally like, please, for the love of God, do not smoke at the camp because that will give whatever law enforcement, like probable cause to come in. And the number of us in this camp that have felony quantities of drugs in our RVs and on us is just like ridiculous. So just don't smoke near camp. And we definitely smoked a little bit, but like way out in deep playa. You're out in the middle of nowhere. Like you're sitting in the fucking desert on some like random art installation, like a mile or two away from your camp.
Jeez,
so
man, that
yeah.
is wild. Who would have thought that weed, man?
Right. Yeah.
It's just, I hate how like obvious weed is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's just, it's too stinky, bro. It's too dank. Yeah.
Were people smoking like tobacco and shit? Or?
Oh yeah. People were smoking cigarettes. Yeah, that was all chill. Like I like bought a vape for the entire event because I was like, oh, usually I'll just vape on like a party weekend, and I'm like, this is just a giant party weekend, and I was glad that I had my vape. Granted, my throat got really fucked up between the vape and the dust. Oh boy, we'll get to that later. But no, it was nice, especially when you're on drugs. It's like nice to have like a vape flavor.
Yeah, dude, especially if you're like snorting shit, like the drip.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You already know. And then the third layer of enforcement is like the DEA, which I've heard actually surprisingly chill. Like the lawyer guy told me they're super chill. And he told me a few years ago, he like stumbled onto some DEA dudes who like had handcuffed like 20 people and they were on their knees. But then like the lawyer guy like turned around and saw these guys just had like bricks of cocaine. And these guys were actually like cartels, like using, I think, Burning Man as like a avenue for smuggling. So he told me the DEA are the chillest. The BLM, just like be careful with weed stuff. And the sheriffs are like just like the biggest dicks. And those are the guys who will fuck you. And the thing is, if they catch you, from what I've heard, it's like they're not even really trying to arrest you. All they're going to do is like charge you like a fine, like a hefty fine, and take your drugs. And it's just like, it's because they don't want to arrest you. Like this is just like a money making event for them. Like they are literally just there to get paid. And what Burning Man does for like the economy of that county, which there's nothing else happening in that county. Like the last two towns that you drive through before you get to like the gate road into Burning Man are like Empire and Gerlach. And these are towns of like less than like 200 people probably. Like there's like nothing there. And so, you know, they're just there to like get paid. And it's honestly interesting because just collectively, like the whole city of Black Rock City and Burning Man just has such a like fuck capitalism, fuck 12 energy. And everyone just like hates the fucking cops because everyone's like doing drugs, like fuck these people. And it's like, yeah. So it's not technically a lawless place, right? Like you're on federal land, but like there are some things that they let slide, like public nudity. Like there are a lot of people who are just butt ass naked at Burning Man. And like I've never heard of like the BLM or sheriffs or whatever doing anything about it. But I would say most of the things that are more like deviant about the event, they're just going against like societal norms. It's like what people wear, the way people act and stuff. And like, yes, there are a lot of drugs, but you can't do them out in the open. And the biggest risk with that is, I believe, under like the sheriff's department, there are actually undercover cops who will go like act like burners and try to catch you with drugs.
Dude, what the fuck? That's so fucked.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked. It's not like something worth stressing about, but you just have to be smart, you know? And actually, we had a run in with a guy that was like 100% an undercover cop. Like this guy was so fucking obvious. And I feel like they tend to be like, everyone at Burning Man jokes that like, dude, you can spot these guys from a mile away. Like just their vibes, like what they're wearing is like so off. And dude, I felt that so hard. So this experience was, I think it was Wednesday. We were at another party camp right next to ours. Oh, also one of the best parts of being with the party camp is that the Burning Man org puts the party camps in one of two main areas in the city. So like we didn't even have to ride our bikes. Like we could just get out of our RVs, walk like 3 minutes like down our street and end up at this like insane fucking party camp with lasers and lights and flames and holy shit.
Damn.
It's like Charlotte DeWitt playing and oh my God. And that's great because those parties get massive. I'm talking thousands of people and everyone parks their bikes. And it's very common at Burning Man to just like lose track of your bike because everyone's bike has lights on it. And you try to park your bike next to like a landmark. Problem is a lot of the landmarks at Burning Man move. So it'll be like art cars. You'll be like, oh, I parked next to this art car. Come back 2 hours later, the art car's long gone. You're like, oh, where the fuck is my bike? Anyway, so we're at this like really sick techno show, like rolling, doing a bunch of other shit. This was one of my Molly nights. And there's this guy walking around wearing like super hokey outfit. This is this dude in his like 40s or something. And he was wearing this blazer that was like bright red with like white heart patterns all over it. It's just like no burner would ever wear that. Burners wear
Bro.
like burners wear anything and everything, but for whatever reason, it's just like it's not that. And he's just like walking back and forth through the crowd. It's a pretty thick crowd. And like you can tell, especially at shows like that, like when people are looking around too much, like it's just kind of weird. It's like, okay, like go where you need to go or find who you need to find, but don't just like linger with your gaze. So you can tell he's lingering a little bit. At some point, he's by me, my girlfriend, and we were there with like a big group from our camp. We were probably like 15, 20 people deep. And he like, his gaze lingers on my girlfriend a little too long. And I think he could sense it was like awkward. So he like comes up to us like in the middle of this fucking rave. He's like, oh, first off, he has the worst British accent I've ever heard. Like so bad. And he's like, oh, you look just like a girl who I'm trying to go to sleep with. It's a first night on the playa. Have you seen her? I'm like, dude, like, no. Like, we're like, and he talks to us a little bit more. And, you know, obviously, you know, we're making conversation, whatever, like not being dicks or anything. Because apparently if you're annoying, they will also have you arrested. Like I heard of someone getting arrested just for pointing out an undercover cop. So it's like, that's not the vibe. I'm trying to get arrested on all my drugs right now and all the shit I have in my fanny pack. And so after some conversation, we're like, oh, he's like, I really want to find her. Like, I really want to fuck her. And we're like, all right, dude, like get after it. Like, what are you doing? Spending 5 minutes here with us? Go find your girl, whatever, go do your thing. Like, so we were talking about it. It was kind of icky. I'm like, I don't support the way you're talking about this, but just like get out of my vibe because like you're cramping my vibe, bro. And at some point, he just turns out to me. He's like, oh, you got any coke, bro? I'm getting tired. I'm like, nah, man, like try somewhere else. And then he just dips. We saw him like one or two other times in the crowd that night. He didn't approach us, but definitely set me on edge a little bit. Like it cramped my vibes a little bit. And and definitely was chilling on the drugs. So you have to be discreet about it. But hey, shout out to our sponsor, Snowgo, because that shit came in clutch at Burning Man. Like I could be in even a pretty small crowd and like be pretty discreet with it. And then I noticed that people at Burning Man are also like pretty hip to spray bottles. So I got offered a lot of like spray ketamine, spray 2C, stuff like that, which is nice. It's just very, very discreet and easy to pull off.
Dude, yeah, it's also like one of my favorite ways to do nose drugs. Like,
dude, it's honestly, I think it's the new wave. Like snow grows are great, but the convenience of not even having to like dig around in a bag and see how much you're getting, like just put a saline thing up to your nose is really, really nice. Yeah. Otherwise, we didn't have any law enforcement mishaps. There are plenty of officers who go around uniformed and like you see them. I think usually those are more like the DEA and the BLM guys. So they didn't cause any trouble. They're just like standing around like the really big parties or the big art cars. So that was chill. Now comes tell a quick story and then can go through like just my final conclusion on the drugs. So one of the guys who was at our camp, I had very briefly met him before because we happen to live in the same city, like just like literally by sheer happenstance met each other. And he's sharing an RV with this friend from Mexico City, who this friend is just like an infamous party animal in Mexico City. Like she's just well known. She has all these nicknames. And apparently she cooks her own 2C that's yellow and she calls it pollo, which is chicken in Spanish.
oh, nice.
It's hilarious. And this guy bought 22 grams of this 2C and he was like, I want to go through it all this week.
Oh my God.
Because he didn't want to go through it all this week. So, and he also told me he spent like $6 or $7 on it, which this man has money.
He wanted to go through it all this week?
Yeah.
Jeez, bro.
And so the way he was going to do that is, he has money. He wasn't worried about that. And he's also someone who just loved sharing his drugs. So yeah, after we became like close homies, it was just like basically instantaneous. Like every time I saw him, he'd be like, yo, Yuki, come over here. And he'd just give me like fat bumps. And so he's like so generous with the drugs. And multiple times I was like, hey, if you want anything else, any other drug, let me know. Like I got you. Because I had basically everything on me at all times. He's like, nah, you're good. Let's do more 2C. Dude, and this guy, so he just loves sharing drugs. Like that's his thing. Bro, we would literally pull up to camps and dose the entire fucking camp with this 2C. Like we go in a small camp, 20, 30 people, just like hang out with them, homies. Bro, by the time we left, like pretty much everyone at that camp was just like tripping balls on 2C.
Oh my God.
And I swear we just left like a trail of fire and trippiness like in our wake.
I love it when people are generous like that, man. It just like creates a vibe. Like
yeah. This guy is such character. Like I love him to death, but also I can only spend so much time with him because he is literally a 38-year-old frat boy, and I love him for it. But I can only take so much. And then one of the evenings we were at this camp called District, which always puts on this really big kind of like it's kind of like a nightclub installation. It's like half indoors, half outdoors, but it's like super well known on Playa. At some point, like the DJ booth at District is stacked on top of a couple shipping containers inside of one. At some point, we're like, oh, let's get above the crowd because there's a massive crowd. And so it's a group of like 10 people above the shipping container. We literally passed like the DEA agents or whatever, like down below in their uniforms, they're like vests, whatever. We're on top of the shipping container. It was super chill. We're the only people up there for whatever reason. And we're all like, all right, time for some 2C. And dude, literally everyone in our group just like lines up in an assembly line, just like nose out, gets a dose from the spoon and carries on.
Oh my God.
Dude, it was.
See, that would have been a good time for a snow go, I feel like.
Oh yeah. It was like elevated, but it was also behind like kind of like a half wall. Like it wasn't as sketchy as it sounds. We did duck down a little bit, but it was like totally chill. Yeah, so that was fine. And then otherwise, I was very much trying to like space out drugs that I couldn't do as often. Like Molly, I did think once towards the beginning, once towards the end, because I did want Molly experiences. I had one big acid night. I had one smaller acid night. Throughout all of that, I'm kind of just mixing shrooms. And then my like go-tos when I was like, I wanted to just like feel like really fucked up all of a sudden would just be ketamine and 2C. And I realized that actually those two drugs are like one of my new favorite combinations. Like it hits you quickly, it hits you pretty hard. And I just like ketamine is such a fun drug, dude. Like I really enjoy ketamine. Like ketamine's great. Obviously do it responsible, spaced out way, but fuck man, ketamine is a lot of fun. And it's interesting. Actually, some people at our camp who are like complete degenerates, they literally don't drink drink? They're like, oh, I just do ketamine all the time.
Oh my
And so
God.
actually the guy who runs our camp, honestly, is kind of an asshole. I'm not a fan of him. Like he makes shit happen, but he's just like not a nice person. Dude, every time I see this guy, he's K'd out of his fucking mind. And it's like, that's definitely overboard. But for me, like, I'd be biking around with my friends, with our little Burning Man fam. I'd be like, would anyone care for some ketamine? And we just take turns dosing each other and riding bikes on ketamine. Hella fun. And yeah, it got to a point where towards the end of the week, like just all drugs started feeling the same. Like I've never been on such a long bender, and it all just kind of like blends together. Like part of it is because you're mixing so many things so often. Part of it's that your tolerance on everything is like pretty sky high. I just had to do like a lot of anything to like feel much. And with things that take longer to hit, like shrooms, like LSD, like just the environment is so crazy when you're mixing it with like faster acting drugs. Like half the time you're like, am I tripping on LSD or not right now? Like I have no fucking
Oh my
clue.
God, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
So
that like a
I would
good way
always,
though? Like you said, all the drugs kind of ran together. Like, is that like in a good way?
yeah, yeah. So everything we were doing was like, everything I was doing, honestly, most people around me were like fine. So generally it would be like no alcohol involved. Generally it'd be like some form of psychedelic and some ketamine and some MDMA. And as long as you're not doing anything too niche, like those all like work fine together.
Nice, dude.
And so that was fun. And so yeah, like for example, like throughout a night, I'd be rolling or tripping on shrooms or LSD. I would just re-up on ketamine or 2C just to like get like a higher feeling at like the beginning of a set or something. And yeah, it was a blast. Dude, the night that we did acid, oh my God. So we were at this other sound camp next to ours, and their big performer that night was what it's called, Polo and Pan. And Polo and Pan is this kind of like EDM artist that uses a lot of like kind of trippy animal sounds. And so I'm like tripping balls while this like weird animal sound thing is playing. Some dude walks, no, actually before that. So this is when like the storm started rolling through, like the storm that brought all of the rain. So like while this is happening, there's like sand blowing everywhere. It's like we're feeling random raindrops. This camp has a lot of just like flame features. So it's like a lot of heat. And it was just like bananas, like just really trippy animalistic music in the storm. And that's when I turn around, there's some dude with like a gallon Ziploc bag of shrooms, just like handing them out in the storm during the set. I'm like, yeah, shit, I'll take some, whatever. Dude, yeah, fucking nuts. It was amazing. Coming out of it, the way I've been telling people is that I've never felt more physically exhausted, but mentally invigorated. And in part 2, we can go over the mentally invigorated part. But as a result, I am now taking a month-long break from drugs, which actually we got quite a few good comments from you guys on our YouTube of one of our earlier episodes on taking breaks from drugs, the importance for that. If that's not common sense, which it should be, it's just a good thing to do. Like I'm using it as an opportunity to let my body reset and also to make sure that I'm not like dependent on any of these things. I think honestly the closest thing I came to like developing any sort of addiction to was honestly the nicotine, because I've never so consistently hit nicotine for that long. And I was also using nicotine to help me stay awake on this like 35-hour drive back. And actually I realized now recently just driving around like my city that a little part of me has come to associate driving with nicotine. So I'm like,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's fine. I haven't hit it since we got back, so it's fine. But otherwise, like, yeah, it's just my body deserves a break. I've been sleeping a lot, and it's been nice getting back into routines and working out and I guess putting weight back on. Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
yeah, dude. All right, well, that's quite long for the the drug portion of this podcast. We'll make this the part 1, and then we'll see you all next week on part 2 for the higher level spiritual and other things learnings from Burning Man.
Thanks, y'all.
Truly, thank you for listening to the show. We seriously fucking appreciate it. If you want to help us out, just leaving a rating or a comment, the drill, would be incredibly helpful. But more importantly, share the knowledge and the love with your friends. Make sure they're getting the information they need on this topic that is so underserved and underappreciated in today's society. We'll see y'all next week.